are Confessional Magazine, and this is More to the Story, brought to you today by Iris and Bo, whose toner helps keep my laugh lines in check, because you never know what our guests are going to say. Visit irisandbo.com today and use code Confessional for 20% off.
So much love in this heart of mine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Confessional Magazine, and I am here today with Quinten Lamar. Thank you so much for being here today, Quinten.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So first, I should ask you, do you like to go by Quinten or do you go by Quinn?
Quinten is the name my mother gave me. Quinn is usually what people call me because they're too lazy to say Quinten, but I don't really have a preference like either way. But my official performing name is Quinten Lamar.
Okay. So where do you come from? How did you get into this?
Well, I come from Detroit.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. Like, it evokes a lot of thoughts about, Black people, crime, music, like all that. That's all me. I got into.
So how long
comedy.
did you live in Detroit? I don't mean to cut you off, but I live in Ohio. I live in Athens, so I'm not actually that far. I'm only I think 3 or 4 hours from Detroit.
You're not far. Are you from born and raised in Ohio?
So it's funny, I'm actually from outside of New York City, and I came out here for school, met my husband and stayed, and now I'm out here. We kind of swapped places.
Okay, because I was going to say that if you were from Ohio, then you would already know what's up between Ohio and Michigan, which you might know already.
Oh yeah. Columbus is only an hour from me.
Yeah, but to answer your question though, I was born and raised in Detroit. That's home. I get there as often as I can. My family's still there because they don't like to visit me here in New York. So they're like, no, I ain't doing that. That's home for me though.
Yeah. Do you have a big family?
I do. My grandmother was one of 15 children.
Whoa.
And all of them immigrated from Alabama to Detroit. So I have cousins everywhere.
That is so fun.
Yeah.
Are you the only one in the city now?
Oh yeah, most of my family, I have 2 sisters. They live in Michigan still. I may have some family sprinkled down south, but for the most part, they're either in the South or in Michigan, Ohio. Yeah, I have family in Ohio too. Cat is Ohio.
Okay. So. Cool.
Yeah.
So when did you
started? I think a lot of comedians, it started for me young. I went to a mostly white school growing up, and that lended itself to a lot of comedy. My home life was a lot different than a lot of people because my parents were really, how can I put this? My parents worked really hard to get us into a nice home and into a nice neighborhood, but my parents were basically just hood people. They were very they were really working class people who worked their way up, and so their perception of things were different, and that kind of spilled on me. So growing up as only Black kid, like I said, humor was a way for me to deal with a lot of being different, being the only one, and stuff like that. My parents also are really into comedy and stand up, and I remember watching it with them as a kid, and it just really influenced me. I knew I wanted to do that. I wanted to perform. And
yeah. So when was the first time you got on stage and performed?
The first time I got on stage and performed was in 4th grade. And I, as the only Black boy, was Martin Luther King in my school Black History Month program. So I like to say I legitimatized the entire thing, So the only bad thing is that they actually replayed the assassination, and I was actually shot dead on stage. How wild is that, right? Yes. In the middle of a speech, they had me I was shot dead, and then they made this whole dramatic thing where they explained what happened. 4th grade.
Can you imagine if they even tried to do that today?
No, they could not. It's not the 90s anymore. They can't do that anymore.
Oh my gosh. I mean, so my husband's best friend is Black, and he grew up in a tiny Appalachian town where his friend was the only Black kid, and he kind of like had the same kind of like, anytime there was like, you know, something through history, it's like he's the one, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, it was, luckily there was another Black kid, because then I would have had to play Malcolm X too. So luckily, but they didn't assassinate Malcolm X though. So that's one good thing. He didn't get shot. It was another storyline.
I cannot believe this.
I had to like practice. I remember like practicing falling out on stage. Like it was like we had to like, you know, when you like practice the like.
What were your parents like in the audience? We're like, that's my boy.
They were like surprised, but like I feel like because they felt like it was given, you know, like any kind of space for it in that school, they were okay with it. But like now, like if I was a parent, I would think like you said, that could not be done now. Like it just couldn't. Not even for the gravity of the situation, that would never be done.
Yeah, so, no, that's wild. Is this on tape?
Okay. Actually, it was on tape. I don't know if my parents still have it though, but it was
wild.
So, that was the first time. That was my first time on stage. I was shot dead.
I mean that's a good grounding spot to just go up, right? I mean,
I really hammed it up too, because like, you know, I was in 4th grade. I didn't really understand the gravity of it. So like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna die. You know, like I did the whole thing. And people like, you know, they didn't laugh, but like, I think they wanted to.
I mean, I don't know what I would have done just being in that audience. I mean, even hearing you talk about it now, it's just like, what the?
Now I tell people that story now and they lose their minds. They're just like, they can't believe it. I'm like, that was the Midwest in the 90s.
Yeah. Welcome to the Midwest.
Yes, very much.
Oh my goodness. So after your 4th grade breakout role, like what was your next, like, when did you decide that you were like gonna pursue this on a bigger ground?
That was much later. I ended up moving from Michigan. I went to school in Michigan, and then I left a little bit afterwards. I dropped out of college and I traveled a little bit. I lived in Europe for a little bit, and I did a lot of different things, saw a lot of different people, saw the performance scene that they had there. And the first time I actually performed stand-up was at this like little nothing place in France. And so I didn't really know, like, you know, there was a lot of language barrier, there's things like that, but I had a good time, and I was like, I like this. But then I never did it again for like another 5 years. So it's a journey, you know, like I was like working jobs and, you know, needing to pay bills, and I didn't really think about it until I got back to New York when I was about 23. And then I started doing some performances, but got heavy into improv. I really love improv. And I don't want to say it's my first love. I just love the art form of it. And so I did a lot of improv with UCB and other like comedy troupes. And then from there, I was like, you know what? I probably should just try to make this a thing and to go for it. And so then I started doing acting, some background work, and doing some performances, like doing stand-up and improv. And that's where we are now.
That's so cool. UCB, so it's like the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York City. That is such like I feel like such a stepping stone for a lot of comedians go through UCB to, I don't know. I mean, my sister, so she lives in New York, and I hear her talking about like her friends that are going through this, and it seems to be like a really good thing. And improv is something that you can carry with you, which is nice. So it like goes into other, beyond just improv. You can use your improv in other acting situations.
Yeah, you can use it on stage as a stand-up comedian. You can use it acting. It gives you a lot of, it kind of, you know, changes how your mind works to a certain degree, and it really is helpful. I didn't spend a lot of time at UCB though. It was a very expensive environment. First of all, I learned a lot, but it was very difficult for that because, like, you know, I was like 23. I was like trying to make ends meet. I was working.
Right.
You know, there was a lot. So I ended up doing a lot of, you know, like hole in the wall bar performances with different improv troupes, and like it was definitely a gateway and a stepping stone for me into doing more of that.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
are things opening up more in the city? Like, are you starting to get any shows lined up now with like quarantine and everything?
There's nothing really to speak of. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our like bars and clubs, comedy clubs are closing or have closed. So I have no idea what that looks like. None of the comedians I know have any, gigs lined up in the city. I was lucky enough to actually do a tour at the big, no, in the summer after, the lockdown happened. I was able to do a traveling outdoor tour
That's
in
very cool.
Connecticut. It was weird. Like performing outside is like, it's fun in a lot of ways, but it's very different than what I've always been used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I was lucky to be able to do that, and that worked well. But yeah, there's not a lot of that going on here now,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's a hard time. I mean, so have you been able to transition that into some like more online stuff so people can
The
find your work that way?
online comedy is difficult. It's very weird. Um, I don't personally like it. I'll just say, and
Mhm.
excuse me, but no, I've done more like podcasts, more recordings like that. I'm actually doing like 3 podcasts right now.
Yeah,
So
tell
that's
me
pretty much
about it.
how I've been. Well, one is a podcast that I've been doing for about 2 years now. It's called Table Verse Podcast. It's like a Starfinder RPG tabletop podcast that's all improv. Like all characters are created by us. All interactions are improv, and we just play the game. It's really fun. We took a break during the beginning of the lockdown because we used to always meet in person, but now we're like um, changing over to doing it virtually. So
Yeah.
that's one. That's the Table Verse Podcast. Another one that I started with my husband during the quarantine was KnowThat Real Housewives Podcast, because
Yeah.
we got we got really into housewives during the quarantine. And so that's been going really well and taking a lot of time. And then I just started a new podcast with a comedian friend of mine, Carol Scudder, where it's called This Is Going to Be Good. And it's like basically we interview city council members and doctors and
Yeah.
experts about things in media, pop culture, things that we care about, but we're not like really that like smart and informed on. So it's like, like we don't know how, what a city council member does, tell
Great.
us what that is. So that's like what we do, and that's been going really well. That's pretty much how I've been keeping myself busy during all of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to still be able to keep those, creative juices flowing. I mean, especially when in a city like New York, there's so much bustling all the time and now it's like stagnant. So
It's
it's
so weird. It's such a
yeah.
weird situation. I went from performing like every week. I had an improv show, an improvised Fresh Prince show that I produced and directed at the Crane Theater in the East Village.
That is
And
so cool.
it was a lot of fun, really fun. And we just, when we were like getting started, we were only going for like maybe 3-4 months, and then quarantine ended it. So it's like I was so used to doing so much more, and then it's like, now what can we do?
Yeah. Itching to get back out there. I mean,
Definitely.
I'm praying it's like around the corner, right? I mean, I know we've been saying that for like a year now, but I think it's finally,
Well, people starting to get vaccinated, so that's a good step
yeah.
in the right direction. I think that within the next year, things hopefully will change. Summer we'll
Yeah.
be able to go outside and do some outside events. So I know at least like when spring hits, I'll probably have to do some outside venues. I know other people, other
Mhm.
comedians I know will be doing some. So that'll hopefully keep us held over until things open up officially.
Yeah, and maybe this is kind of like for some artists to like collaborate a little bit more where maybe they wouldn't have initially. And then when things do get open up more, it's kind of like you've been able to like set the groundwork for new opportunities a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened with me and Carol. Like we basically started the podcast, this is going to be good, because we had time, and we'd always say like, let's do something together. Let's do let's produce a comedy show together. And we always wanted to do that, but we never actually had a chance. And now it's like, shit,
it's going, and it's going well. That's great.
Yeah, let's do it.
So who would you say are your your comedic like inspirations growing up?
Oh boy. That's a big one. Well, definitely Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney Dangerfield, I think, is one of the best to ever do it. I can't even do him justice giving him a compliment. Beloved, his one-liners are iconic. He's one of the first comedians that, like, as a kid, made me like laugh out loud. Like, hilarious. It's not a popular thing for me to say, especially now, but Roseanne. I think Roseanne is a damn good stand-up comic, really.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not a comedy movie or show at all, but I just watched, I Know This Much Is True on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
And she is phenomenal.
She was at the beginning of her career.
Oh, no.
Going into it. I'm sorry.
I got the names wrong. I was on to Rosie O'Donnell. You're
Rose
talking
O'Donnell.
Roseanne Barr.
Roseanne. Well, actually, funny, they're both named Roseanne. But Rosie O'Donnell had to be Rosie because there already was a Roseanne who was a comedian. So that's a little fun fact for you. But I was thinking about that. I tend to put them, probably because I'm racist, I kind of put them in the same. My mind,
I am too.
But they're very different. They're very different. And Rosie was also a very good comedian, great comedian. But Roseanne, in her heyday, before all of her drama, I think she was a very good comedian. Also, Paul Mooney, one of the first comedians that I was introduced to. My parents are huge Paul Mooney fans. And if I have to round it out, because I like to do for George Carlin, of course, who's like the king of telling stories and all that. So those were the comedians that I saw in my house often when my parents would like watch stand-up shows and things like that. And they influenced me a lot. So
when you're getting ready for your shows, do you always kind of like map out what you're gonna get up there and talk about? Or are you just like, you know what, I have a few things in my head and whatever gets to me when I get on stage, like that's what's happening?
Everybody should always, if you're going to do stand-up, you should always have your set down. Like, you shouldn't. Few people are, I feel, in a realm where they can just get up and like rant for like 5 minutes and everything lands. Like that's tough. I always know what I'm going to talk about. Material. What you want to do is write material, perform it at open mics, work it out. Then you can adjust on stage later. If you don't know where the jokes are in your set, you don't know what your set is. Does that make sense? You're falling flat. Yeah, you need to know where the laughs are. And you only do that by having a set that you've worked out and you perform. So there have been times when I've done a little rant, or I've gone a little like off topic, because of what was going on with me that day or something, or maybe trying something out. But for the most part, I have a set, and this is a set, and I'm going to do it. And I think that's an idea for me.
So do you pull from like your actual real life? Like, are you getting up there and like telling stories about like, what's going on at home or your friends or whatever?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, you have to draw from your personal experience. It's the only way you can be an original comedian. It has to be your truth, and people that of course connect to that, they want to see that, and you have to use your own influences. You can't tell somebody else's.
So I have to ask then, has that ever created an issue? Like, I know there are some stories, like I can get up on stage and like tell about my husband, and he might not be so happy that I just did that.
Well, I get that. I'm lucky because my husband he enjoys being a spectacle. Like, he enjoys. If I tell a joke about him, he'll laugh louder than everybody else, and not to be nice. Like, he'll think like, "Oh yeah, I do that." My husband is a wonderfully ridiculous man, and he provides an endless supply of comedy for me. It's like he just throws away stuff. Like, I of course growing up was a class clown. I used to get in trouble all the time for disrupting class. It was my thing. And the other day, he just offhanded, we were talking about school because like my niece and nephews are like in the process of going back to school and working that out in Michigan. And I was saying how the principal was like monitoring all of that and everything. And so he said that he used to love when principals would come to the class to like monitor the teacher. And I was like, as a kid, why would you care about that? And he told me, he was like, because I knew that if the principal was there, all the kids would be very well behaved. And I thought, who the hell did I marry? Like who on earth? I mean, if you know him, you'd understand why that makes sense. But that was the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And it just completely isn't step. I'm like, what kind of kid were you where you were hoping your classmates were well behaved? I'm like, and he does stuff like that all the time. It's just, he thinks it's normal. Like, that's not like normal.
Genuine.
It's genuine. Like he likes people to follow the rules. Like it's, and I'm the worst person for him to be with, but we make it work somehow. But
well, I love that you guys have each other to balance each other out then.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a different two sides of a coin thing.
Yeah. So where's the spot that you would say is your favorite place that you've performed in New York?
My favorite place to perform in New York. Well, I would say probably Stand Up New York, which is uptown, 72nd and Broadway. And that is because it's the first place that I performed and got really good advice, and I really liked the vibe. It's a lot of these places are closed, unfortunately. I believe Stand Up New York is closed also. But I used to be one of those people in Times Square that would ask you, tickets to free comedy, live comedy. And if you sell enough tickets, you get time on stage. And so that was the place where I met. Yeah. Like if the people who are selling you tickets are usually comedians who are like, trying to sell tickets to get time. Yeah. That's and awesome. That was, I mean, it's difficult. Like you go out there at like 10 o'clock in the morning and you want to sell like at least $100 worth of tickets. And you get money from it. Like you do get paid for it, but the most important thing is the stage time.
Yeah.
And sometimes like, it's cold, it's brutal out there. You're out there for like hours at a time. People are like shitty to you, but it's worth it. But I say that Stand Up New York is my favorite because that was, who I did that for, but also where I got on stage and met people who actually like gave me great advice. Like, I met Dave Attell doing that. And I met Dave Chappelle doing that. Like these were, moments that, and watching people perform that really, I think influenced me that I'll never forget. So my answer is Stand Up New York.
I mean, so you just said that you met Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing, right? Especially because you've said that you like looked up to him, or I read on your Facebook page that you looked up to him and everything. So like, what was that experience like to like be in contact with somebody that you're used to always looking up to?
I mean, it was great. He was very nice, which he didn't have to be. He's one of the nicest comics that I met. I also got to meet Paul Mooney, who was also very nice. It's the thing what I love about stand-up is that it's a space where really important and big people meet very small and unimportant people in the business often. And I like that because, you get to see how the master does it. Like being able to, sit back and watch and, behind the stage or whatever, how Dave Chappelle does his show. Like it's
invaluable.
Yeah, it's a great experience to have. So I loved it. He was very nice. He was a great guy. He gave some really good advice to me.
What
like he told me that I needed to work on breaking the tension sometimes with what I talk about, because I talk about a lot of things that are like kind of heavy. Like, I love to talk about slavery and everything. And it took some time to learn how to talk about heavy subjects and not let it lay on the audience too long. And like, he's the master of telling like a very heavy, inappropriate joke and doing all that. So he like gave me that, he's like, you want to watch the timing of that and make sure that you're giving them permission to laugh. And I never forgot that.
That's such great advice. I mean,
it is.
Because you need the response of your audience. Otherwise, what you're doing doesn't matter, right? Like,
Yeah, the first rule is to make people laugh. If you're not making people laugh, then what are you doing? You know?
Yeah. So with these heavy topics, when you're doing this, that's got to be like it's a fine line between, but you shouldn't be saying that, and this is hilariously funny. And some people aren't going to get it no matter what, I'm sure. Right?
Yeah, some people, depending on your audience, some people aren't going to hear what you have to say. Like, you know, especially in this climate where people are very particular about all of their content, like everything that they consume, like whether it's your opinion or whether it's something on TV. Most people have a very loud and outspoken opinion on it. And, you know, as a comic, it's your job to make people think and sometimes make people uncomfortable, but of course, first to make them laugh while you do all those things. And that's not easy to do. But you gotta be honest. You gotta tell you the truth, and you gotta talk about what you want to talk about, and try to find a way to make it all work.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, you've just gotta. I am looking forward to the day that things are open back up, and I'm back home in Jersey visiting my family, and I can come into the city and see you performing, because I just think that there's something special about stand-up comedy in general, but people that are able to get up on stage and tell the story. You know, you're not just a comedian. You're not up there just, you know, telling a knock joke, but you're able to get up there on stage and actually tell a true story. And you're pushing it even further and taking it to these, you know, topics that like some people are too scared to talk about, you know, or too nervous, or just too self-conscious maybe of what the audience is going to throw back at them when they put it out there. Yeah. But I mean, it's so nice to, get a storyteller up there that can like make you think but keep you laughing. So that's really cool that you are able to do that.
I appreciate that. I'd love to, I just love to perform. Again, somebody asked me, they're like, you know, do you miss performing? And I was like, well, as a kid, I used to like come home from school and like exaggerate my day to make it more interesting to my mother when I told her about it. I was like, so yes, I need to be on stage soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that'll happen soon, and I'd love for you to come and see. That'd be great.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
And thank you for what you're saying.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's true, especially right now. I found, at least I know that this is my own truth, but the entertainment industry has pretty much been like a godsend in the past year, more so than ever, because everyone's stuck home, you know. Yeah. Everyone's a home chef now. Everyone has like, you know, like you just, yeah. we need to laugh. We need connection with each other. And it's the people that are getting out there and doing the podcasts. It's the people that are out there and doing, you know, interviewing the town councilman, you know, it's the people that are doing these things that are, it's just making a new normal feel okay. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we have to keep going. We have to keep, you know, striving and trying to connect with people, like you said, and finding different ways to express ourselves and to feel connected with other people. Like that's the hardest thing that has been for me during all this, to feel connected with people, being, you know, not away from, like, I recently got vaccinated and I went with my husband and we were like, this is the first time we've been around this many people. We were like in a room with probably close to 100 people. And I was like, I almost feel like I'm like freaking out a little bit, because I'm not used to, like, you know, people having conversations over here, people just, you know, some asshole just staring at me. Like, these are all things I'm not used to anymore. So it's definitely, but I felt good afterwards, you know, like I felt like some normalcy had returned.
And almost like you can like just have like a release of like.
Oh yeah. I know people who, like, after getting the vaccine, like it was an emotional moment for them, because like they felt like, you know, finally some progress, finally something towards going back to something, even semblance of normalcy.
A little bit of hope.
A little bit of hope, like something,
Yeah.
because people, people need people. So
People need people, and especially where you're at in New York City, that's a city that, people are literally living on top of other
on top of
people.
each other.
Mm.
I
But
even miss taking a crowded subway. Like that's how bad it is.
yeah, the subway performers, right?
I love subway performers. I know people like hate them, but I love them. I think they're incredibly innovative. I enjoy it. You'd be surprised how many times you see something that's actually very good.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like,
yeah.
so yeah, all
Yeah, I
that.
mean, I'm always impressed by like, I mean, anybody that has the guts to get out there and perform in front of anybody is a performer. I don't care if you're turning a tin pan upside down and banging it on the sidewalk. You're having the confidence to do it. I say, good for you. Get out there and do it. But you're right. Some of those people that get on there and they're like swinging. I love when they're like dancing on like the bars of the subway. That's my favorite.
Yeah. And I'm like, look, I mean, this is what you get. Like, these are like usually like inner city kids, like this is more of a reason for you to put gymnastics in schools. Like, look at what these kids can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep. So right. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, we don't have to keep harping on like the quarantine thing, but like, I can't wait to see what kids are going to do when they're able to be like fully back together, because they've had so much time apart that I think that their little brains have been like little computerized the past year. But like, so now once they get back together, I think they're just going to be unstoppable. The kids are going to just blow us out of the water. I hope in a good way.
I can't imagine. If like I have a niece she just started kindergarten like last year, so she kind of got interrupted. And I have a nephew who is 13. I couldn't imagine if I had to take a year off of school. I don't know what I would have done, or what, how hard it must be on my, sister and her husband to like homeschool them, and I would have been a monster.
Yeah, I can't. I feel like my parents are still married. I think they might not have been if
no, like my parents, I don't know how my parents have done it. But my parents are still together too. I don't know. Like it's hard. Like quarantine has been hard on relationships, period. Like I've seen a lot of relationships end. And I've seen a lot of relationships get close really fast, like scary fast.
Yep. I've seen it on both ends too. You're right.
Yeah. So it's like, what happens after things get normal again, when you like you were dating for like 3 months and like now you're like almost married and like living together. Like what
we'll see. I mean, time will tell.
For real. I don't know. It was difficult. Like nobody said when we got married that we'd have to spend this much time with our spouses. Like that's not fair. Like this has been crazy. And then we like did some like redecorating. So like we were like putting together furniture and stuff together. Like we really tested the waters here.
Oh yeah, I get it. We just installed new flooring in our house, and we're pretty much like renovating the whole thing. But to be honest with you, I feel like I used to see my husband more before, because now he's working from home. So now he's constantly in the office. And when he's done in the office, he doesn't have the commute home, and he's not like, he knows I'm around all day. So now he's not like excited to spend time with me because, I'm just in the other room. So when he's done with work, he'll just go play Xbox. So like before we used to like hang out a little bit more, but I feel like now that he's home, it's like, see ya.
It's all you're just there. We had that problem at the beginning of quarantine where we were like kind of on top of each other, but then we both got busy with projects, and now we're kind of there where we like kind of like, do you want to hang out? Yeah, we can, but I could also be doing this or whatever. Yeah. But that took time. We drove each other crazy before that. But now here we are.
Well, Quint, I am just so happy that you came on here and joined me today, and you have to let me know, any of your online stuff that you're doing, any special shows you have coming up. And, you know, when things do get opened up, please let me know what's going on, because I'll make sure that everybody gets to hear more about Quinten Lamar.
Thank you very much. I look forward to, you know, like meeting you, or you come into, you say you're in New Jersey, that's right across the lake. So
Yep. And my sister's, she moved from Inwood to the Bronx recently. So she's out there too. Yeah.
I mean, I don't go to the Bronx, but I know it's, you know, not that far.
Yeah. Well, it was so nice to like officially meet you. And I am just so excited about, you know, your journey and your story. And thank you for sharing a bit of it with me today. And, you know, I just can't wait for more people to hear your comedy.
Well, thank you for having me. It was I had a really great time, and thank you for everything you said. I appreciate you and all that. Thank you.
Oh, of course. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So much love in this heart of mine.